I've never been a morning person. The shrieking alarm on my nightstand was doing its job perfectly, and I hated it for that. 6:30 a.m. in Las Vegas, and already the heat was seeping through my thin apartment walls. I slapped at my phone, buying another 9 minutes of uneasy half-sleep that would leave me feeling worse, not better. Same as yesterday. Same as tomorrow. My apartment was small but functional. One bedroom with a view of another identical apartment building, kitchen with just enough counter space to make coffee, living room that doubled as my home office when work got too overwhelming to stay late. Nothing special, but it was mine. Rent was reasonable for Vegas, which is to say only mildly extortionate. I thumbed through emails on my phone. Meeting at 9:30. Deadline for the Repton project pushed to Thursday. A reminder about Brad's birthday lunch. Normal Tuesday things. The radio clicked on automatically as I passed. Another of my morning rituals, though I rarely listened closely. Just background noise to fill the silence of living alone. Repeating, the National Weather Service has issued an unusual atmospheric anomaly alert for Clark County and surrounding areas. Residents may notice unusual cloud formations over the desert northeast of the city. Officials state there is no cause for. The broadcaster's voice cut out, replaced by the harsh, digital tone of the emergency alert system. I paused, one arm through a fresh shirt sleeve. These tests happened occasionally, but something about the timing made me stop. The following message is transmitted at the request of the United States Department of Defense. At 0600 hours Pacific Standard Time, atmospheric anomalies were detected over the Nevada desert, approximately 30 miles northeast of Las Vegas. These anomalies are currently being investigated. Residents are advised to proceed with normal activities, but report any unusual observations to local authorities. This is not a cause for alarm. Regular updates will follow. The broadcast returned to morning talk radio, hosts already joking about aliens at Area 51 again. I finished buttoning my shirt, dismissing the alert as I did the coffee stain. Just another annoyance in a day already determined to irritate me. The drive to work was 20 minutes on a good day, 35 on a bad one. Today felt different though. Traffic was lighter than usual, with noticeable gaps on the normally packed streets. Maybe there was a convention ending, tourists clearing out. Or beginning, everyone already at the Strip. Vegas logic followed its own rules. At the intersection of Tropicana and Paradise, I noticed the first real oddity. A cluster of people stood on the corner, faces turned toward the sky. I followed their gaze, but saw only the usual bright blue, unmarred except for a few thin clouds to the northeast. The light turned green, and I drove on. The office was a 15-story building off the Strip, far enough from the tourist chaos, but close enough that clients could find us easily. I worked for a mid-sized marketing firm, nothing glamorous, mostly casino promotions, local business rebrands, the occasional shopping center grand opening. I was a project manager, which meant I juggled timelines and client expectations while trying not to lose my mind. The elevator was nearly empty as I rode up to the 11th floor. By 8:45, I was at my desk, coffee stain successfully hidden beneath a blazer I kept on the back of my chair for precisely these emergencies. "Morning," said Elaine from the desk across from mine. She didn't look up from her computer. "Morning." I powered up my computer and shuffled through the papers left on my desk. "Quiet in here today." Half the creative team called out. Something about traffic on I-15. Accident maybe. I nodded, only half listening as I skimmed emails. The morning passed in its usual rhythm. Calls, emails, spreadsheet updates, one minor client crisis averted. By noon, I had forgotten about the morning alert entirely. The break room was unusually empty for lunchtime. I unwrapped my sandwich at the small table near the window, scrolling through news on my phone. Nothing about atmospheric anomalies or desert incidents. Typical media cycle. If it wasn't dramatic enough, it wasn't worth reporting. "Did you see the lights last night?" I looked up. Marcus from accounting stood by the coffee machine, mug in hand, eyes on me. "What lights?" "Over by Nellis. Weird patterns, kinda pulsing. Thought it might be a new show at the Strip, but it was too far north." I shrugged. "Probably military exercises. They're always testing something out there." "Maybe." He didn't sound convinced. "My buddy works security at the Stratosphere. Said guests were calling about it all night. Said it didn't look like any military aircraft he'd ever seen." Before I could respond, both our phones buzzed simultaneously, the harsh alert tone cutting through the break room's quiet. I looked down at the screen. "Emergency alert. The following message is transmitted at the request of the Nevada Emergency Management Agency and the United States Department of Defense. Ongoing investigation of atmospheric phenomena near Nellis Air Force Base continues. Residents are advised that unusual light patterns or minor atmospheric disturbances may be visible. These are related to routine testing and pose no threat to public safety. Residents are advised to continue normal activities. Further updates will be provided as necessary. Marcus read the alert on his own phone, then met my eyes. Routine testing, huh? Since when does routine testing get 2 emergency alerts? Since they don't want people panicking over nothing, I replied, more sharply than intended. Something about his tone irritated me. Vegas attracted conspiracy theorists like moths to flame. Everything was aliens or government plots or whatever the latest internet rabbit hole suggested. Sure, man. Whatever you say. He filled his mug and left without another word. I finished my sandwich in silence, trying to focus on afternoon tasks, but found myself staring out the window instead. The sky looked different somehow, not in any way I could articulate, just wrong. The blue seemed deeper, more intense, and there was a faint haziness on the horizon to the northeast. Probably just pollution or desert dust. Vegas air was never exactly pristine. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister in Phoenix. "You okay?" Seeing weird reports about Vegas on social. I frowned and typed back, "Everything's fine." "What reports?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then. "Something about weird weather? Military activity?" "Not clear. Just checking on you." "All normal here," I replied. "Just Tuesday in Vegas." I put my phone away and returned to my desk. The afternoon proceeded with mechanical precision. A conference call at 2, project updates at 3, emails until my eyes crossed. By 5:15, I was packing up, ready to fight traffic home. "You headed out?" Elaine asked, still focused on her screen. "Yeah. Need anything before I go?" She shook her head. "No. Just drive safe, okay?" Something in her tone made me pause. "Any reason I wouldn't?" Elaine finally looked up, her expression unreadable. "No reason. Just a feeling. Weird day." I nodded and left, unsettled by her comment, but unwilling to ask for elaboration. The elevator down was completely empty this time. The lobby too. Where was everyone? Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. The air felt different, heavier, electric somehow, like before a thunderstorm. But the sky remained clear except for that strange haziness to the northeast, now more pronounced. As I unlocked my car, I noticed small particles drifting through the air, catching the sunlight like tiny flecks of ash. Probably nothing. Just dust. Vegas was surrounded by desert, after all. I drove home in unusual silence, radio off, windows up against the strange particles. Traffic remained eerily light. At home, I stepped onto my small balcony and looked toward the northeast, where the haze was darkening as the sun began to set. My phone buzzed one final time that day. Another emergency alert. Emergency alert. Civil authorities advise all residents of Clark County to remain vigilant for further updates regarding atmospheric conditions. Minor particulate matter may be present in the air due to increased winds from the northeast. This presents no immediate health concerns. Continue normal activities, but stay tuned to local news for updates. I watched as more ash-like particles drifted down, landing on my balcony railing, on my arms, in my hair. They didn't feel like dust. They felt deliberate. Just another Tuesday in Vegas. Until it wasn't. Sleep eluded me that night. I kept walking to the window, drawn by some unnamed anxiety, checking the sky as if it might reveal answers. The ash, or whatever it was, continued to fall, a silent, gentle descent that reminded me of snow, though I'd rarely seen actual snow in Vegas. By 2 a.m., a thin layer of the stuff coated my balcony. I didn't touch it. Something instinctual warned me against it. Morning arrived with the harsh buzz of my alarm and a pounding headache. The light streaming through my blinds seemed different, diffused as if filtered through gauze. I reached for my phone, checking for updates before my feet even hit the floor. 3 missed calls from my sister. Several news notifications. A text from Elaine. "You coming in today? Half the office is out." I walked to the window and pulled up the blinds. The ash was still falling, heavier now, and the sky had taken on a strange amber tint. Not the brilliant blue of yesterday's morning, but something sickly, unnatural. The distant mountains were barely visible through the haze. My TV clicked on with the morning news as I made coffee with mechanical movements. Continuing our coverage of what officials are now calling an environmental incident northeast of Las Vegas. The Clark County Emergency Management Agency has confirmed that particulate matter is spreading throughout the valley and advises residents to remain indoors when possible. Air quality warnings are in effect, but authorities maintain there is no immediate. The broadcast cut to static, then the emergency alert system tone blared. Emergency alert. The following message is transmitted at the request of the Nevada Emergency Management Agency. At 0730 hours, a mandatory shelter-in-place order has been issued for all residents within Las Vegas city limits due to deteriorating air quality conditions. Close all windows and doors. Minimize outdoor exposure. Do not attempt to collect or disturb the particulate matter. Emergency services are responding. Remain tuned to local broadcasts for further instructions. The broadcast returned, but now the anchors seemed more tense, their practiced smiles strained. We're getting reports that the highway situation has worsened this morning, the female anchor said. Let's go to Tom for traffic updates. The screen split to show a traffic reporter, but instead of the usual helicopter footage, they were using still images. The reporter looked nervous. Thanks, Diane. We're having some technical difficulties with our traffic cameras this morning, but reports indicate significant congestion on all major arteries leading out of the valley. I-15 southbound is at a standstill near Prim. Similar situations on US 95 and I-15 northbound. Las Vegas Metro Police are advising residents to stay off the roads unless absolutely necessary. I texted Elaine, working from home today. Road conditions sound bad. Her reply was immediate. Smart move. Things are weird here. Air feels wrong. I opened Twitter, scrolling through local hashtags. Conflicting information everywhere. Some posts claimed the ash was from a forest fire in California. Others insisted it was chemical fallout from a military accident. A few fringe accounts were already talking about biological weapons or alien invasion. Typical internet chaos during a crisis. Everyone an expert, no one knowing anything. My sister called again as I was making breakfast. Finally, are you okay? Her voice was tight with worry. I'm fine. Just some weird weather or something. They're telling us to stay inside. It's all over the news here. They're saying it's some kind of chemical spill from Nellis, but then other reports are saying it's atmospheric testing gone wrong. She paused. Can you get out? Come to Phoenix? Roads are jammed. Besides, they've issued a shelter-in-place order. It'll blow over. I don't like this. The reports don't make sense. Some people are saying. Her voice cut out, replaced by static. Hello, Megan? I checked my phone. Call failed. I tried redialing. No service. As if on cue, my apartment's power flickered, the lights dimming before returning to normal. I moved to the window again. The ash continued its relentless descent, thicker now, swirling in patterns that seemed almost deliberate. Something caught my eye, movement on the street below. A group of people were walking together, heads tilted upward, arms extended as if welcoming the falling particles. They moved in strange unison, their pace measured, deliberate. My landline phone rang, startling me. I rarely used it, keeping it only for emergencies. This qualified. Hello. This is an automated emergency notification for Clark County residents. The voice was robotic, emotionless. Proceed immediately to your nearest evacuation center. Bring only essential supplies. Medical attention will be available at all centers. Transportation is being arranged for those without vehicles. This message will repeat. The message began again. I hung up, confusion mounting. Stay inside or evacuate. Which instruction was current? I turned on the TV again, searching for clarification. A different emergency alert now filled the screen. Emergency alert. By order of the Nevada State Emergency Response Commission, all previous evacuation notices are rescinded. Residents must remain in their current locations until further notice. Disregard any evacuation instructions. Roads are unsafe. Shelter in place is mandatory. Violation of this order may result in detainment. This is not a test. My phone buzzed with a text message, somehow getting through despite the no service indicator. Unknown number. Don't trust the broadcasts. They're lying about what's in the ash. Get out now. A chill ran through me. I deleted the message immediately, as if its mere presence on my phone was dangerous. The power went out completely then, plunging my apartment into an eerie half-light filtered through the ash-dimmed windows. I tried the landline again. Dead. My cell phone showed no service, but Wi-Fi was still working somehow. I opened my laptop, trying to find reliable information online. Social media was in chaos, contradictory reports, panic, wild theories. Government websites were down or not updating. News sites showed conflicting information, some reporting an industrial accident, others a weather phenomenon, a few hinting at military involvement. A video was trending, shaky footage taken from a high-rise somewhere in Vegas, showing the strip below through the falling ash. The famous landmarks were barely visible, ghostly outlines in the haze. But what had captured attention were the lights, strange, pulsing blue-white glows moving through the ash clouds above the city. Not aircraft, not lightning, something else. The video abruptly ended with the camera panning to a window where the ash appeared to be moving, pressing against the glass in patterns like fingers testing for weakness. My phone buzzed again, another text from an unknown number. They're in the ash. They're changing it, changing us. Outside my window, the ash had begun to behave strangely, swirling in tight, circular patterns instead of falling straight down. The people I'd seen earlier were gone. The street was deserted except for abandoned cars. In the distance, I heard sirens, then a sound like thunder, but the vibration felt wrong, too rhythmic, too deliberate. My laptop screen flickered, then displayed another emergency alert. Emergency alert. The following message is transmitted at the request of the United States Department of Defense. Las Vegas is now under military authority. A mandatory curfew is in effect immediately. Residents must remain indoors. Do not attempt to leave the city. Do not interact with the atmospheric particulates. Contamination protocols are in effect. Further instructions will follow. Compliance is mandatory. As if responding to the alert, the ash outside my window suddenly intensified, the particles now so dense they obscured everything beyond my building. Through the white haze, I could make out strange, shifting shapes, tall, elongated forms moving with liquid grace. Then the internet connection died, and my laptop screen went black. In the silence that followed, I heard something new, a faint, high-pitched tone, just at the edge of hearing. It seemed to be coming from the ash itself, a singing, beckoning sound that made my teeth ache and my thoughts scatter. And deep in my mind, a quiet voice whispered, "This is only the beginning." I must have fallen asleep somehow, despite the chaos. The high-pitched tone had wormed its way into my brain, initially maddening, then strangely soothing, until consciousness simply slipped away. When I woke, my apartment was dark. The digital clock on my microwave was blank, power still out. My watch read 6:17 a.m., but the quality of light filtering through the ash-covered windows suggested later. My head pounded with a dull, persistent ache. My mouth tasted metallic. I stumbled to the kitchen and turned the tap. A weak trickle of water emerged, then nothing. Of course, no power often meant no water in high-rise buildings. I had some bottled water stored for emergencies. This certainly qualified, and a few canned goods. Enough for a couple of days, maybe 3 if I rationed carefully. After that, I didn't want to think about after that. My cell phone was dead, the charger useless without electricity. My laptop still had some battery, but with no internet connection, it was just an expensive paperweight. The landline remained silent when I lifted the receiver. Outside, the ash continued to fall, but the strange, swirling patterns had subsided. Now it simply descended in a steady, relentless curtain, accumulating on every surface. The street below was transformed, covered in a uniform blanket of white-gray that smoothed over the contours of abandoned cars and obscured the asphalt completely. No footprints marred its perfect surface. No movement disturbed the deathly stillness. I needed information. Needed to know what was happening, what to do. The isolation was almost worse than the actual crisis. Being cut off, left in the dark both literally and figuratively. For all I knew, evacuation was underway, help was available just blocks away. Or maybe the entire city had been abandoned, left to the mercy of whatever was in the ash. I found an old battery-powered radio in my emergency kit, a relic from a more paranoid phase of my life that now seemed entirely justified. I twisted the dial, searching for any transmission. Static. More static. Then faintly. Repeat. This is the emergency broadcast system. Military authorities have established containment zones throughout Clark County. Residents must proceed to the following locations for processing and evacuation: UNLV Thomas and Mack Center, Cashman Center, Orleans Arena, Sam Boyd Stadium. Medical screening is mandatory. Bring identification and essential supplies only. Transportation is available at major intersections. If you are hearing this broadcast, you are instructed to. The transmission cut off, replaced by a burst of static, then silence. Processing. Evacuation. Containment zones. Military authorities. The clinical language couldn't mask the underlying reality. Something had gone catastrophically wrong, and Las Vegas was being quarantined. I looked out the window again. No sign of transportation at the intersection. No movement at all. I had to risk going outside. Not to find evacuation. The conflicting instructions from yesterday had destroyed any trust one had in official directives. But to find other people information, maybe someone who knew what was actually happening. I dressed methodically, long sleeves, pants, boots. Wrapped a scarf around my face as a makeshift mask. Found work gloves in a drawer. Every exposed bit of skin felt like a vulnerability, though I wasn't sure exactly what I was protecting against. The ash. Something in the ash? The hallway outside my apartment was empty and silent. Emergency lighting cast a feeble glow at intervals, barely enough to navigate by. I listened at neighboring doors as I passed. Nothing. Had everyone evacuated already? I knocked on Mrs. Winter's door. She was elderly, might have needed help getting out. No response. The stairwell was darker still, and I descended carefully, my phone's flashlight function providing meager illumination. 10 floors down, I pushed open the heavy fire door to the lobby. The scene was one of abandoned flight. Luggage and personal items scattered across the floor. The front desk unmanned. The large glass doors to the street were propped open, letting in swirls of ash that had already begun to accumulate in drifts against the walls. I stepped outside, the scarf pulled tight across my face. The air had a strange quality, heavy, thick, almost gelatinous in my lungs. The ash immediately settled on my clothes, a fine powder that seemed to shimmer slightly when I moved. I brushed it off instinctively, careful not to let it touch my skin. The street was transformed. Cars abandoned at odd angles. No people visible. The ash deadened all sound, creating an unnatural silence broken only by the soft whisper of falling particles. I checked my watch again, almost 8 a.m. now, but the light remained strange, diffused through the ash-choked atmosphere, casting no shadows. I moved toward the main boulevard, hoping to find signs of the evacuation points mentioned in the broadcast. 2 blocks in, I saw my first person, a man standing motionless in the middle of the street, his back to me, ash accumulating on his shoulders like epaulets. "Hey!" I called, my voice muffled by the scarf and the ash-deadened air. "Do you know where the evacuation points are?" The man didn't respond, didn't move. I approached cautiously. "Excuse me? Are you okay?" Still no response. I circled around to face him, keeping a few feet of distance. His eyes were open but vacant, staring upward at the falling ash. His expression was one of slack fascination, mouth slightly open, ash collecting on his lips, his eyelashes. He made no move to brush it away. Didn't blink as particles landed on his eyeballs. "Sir? Can you hear me?" Nothing. Not even a flicker of recognition. He just kept staring upward, entranced by the endless, silently falling particles. I backed away, unnerved. As I put distance between us, I noticed something else. Where he stood, the ash on the ground was forming that same swirling pattern I'd seen from my window, radiating outward from his feet like ripples in water. I turned and hurried away, no longer calling out. 2 blocks later, I saw more people, 3 of them, standing in similar poses, faces turned upward, bodies motionless except for the slight rise and fall of breathing. One woman's hair had so much ash accumulated that it looked like a white wig. None responded to my presence. Near the strip, I found what had once been a bustling intersection, now a ghost town of abandoned vehicles. A city bus sat at an angle across 2 lanes, its doors open, interior empty. A police car, similarly abandoned, its lights still flashing silently, ash already dulling the red and blue to murky pulses. I climbed onto the hood of a taxi for a better view. In the distance, I could make out the Thomas and Mack Center, one of the evacuation points mentioned in the broadcast. But there was no sign of activity, no lines of people, no military presence. Just the relentless ash, covering everything in its silent, inexorable tide. My radio crackled to life in my pocket, making me flinch. Contamination spreading faster than anticipated. New parameter established at static. All units fall back to more static. Civilians showing signs of exposure to be considered. The broadcast dissolved into unintelligible noise, then cleared momentarily. Repeat, this is not a rescue operation anymore. Priority is containment. Las Vegas is being sealed. No exceptions. My blood went cold. Not a rescue operation. Sealed. No exceptions. They were trapping us here. Whatever was in the ash, whatever was happening, they'd given up trying to save people and were focusing on containing it. Containing us. As this realization sank in, I noticed something else. My watch had stopped. But not just stopped. The hands were moving backward, slowly but perceptibly, ticking in reverse. 8:13, 8:12, 8:11. I looked up, scanning the ash-veiled buildings. Digital signs, normally blazing with advertisements, were malfunctioning, numbers and letters rearranging themselves into impossible configurations. On one, I could have sworn I saw my name briefly form before dissolving into random characters. My phone, dead for hours, suddenly vibrated in my pocket. Impossible. I pulled it out. The screen showed a single message. We see you. We are coming. We are already here. The timestamp read 11:42 p.m. Tomorrow's date. I dropped the phone as if it had burned me. It hit the ash-covered pavement and sank slightly, the gray particles shifting around it, pulling it down, embracing it. Within seconds, it had disappeared completely, swallowed by what I now understood was not ash at all. Above me, through the thickening veil, I caught a glimpse of something moving, a tall, elongated silhouette gliding between buildings. Not walking, flowing, like the ash itself had taken form. I ran, away from the vanished phone, away from the backwards ticking watch, away from the silhouette that had no right to exist in any world I understood. I ran until my lungs burned with the strange, heavy air, until ash coated my eyelashes and crunched between my teeth despite the scarf. I ran until I realized I was lost in a city I'd lived in for years, all landmarks obscured, all familiar references buried beneath the quietly falling knot ash that whispered as it descended. We see you. We are coming. We are already here. I don't know how long I ran. Time had become unreliable, stretching and contracting like a living thing. Eventually, my burning lungs forced me to stop, doubling over in an ash-covered doorway of what had once been a convenience store. The windows were shattered, shelves mostly empty, looted or abandoned in haste, impossible to tell which. I pulled down my scarf, gasping for air, then immediately regretted it as ash particles invaded my mouth and nose. Coughing violently, I retreated inside the store, closing the door behind me. The ash had penetrated here too, but less densely. I could breathe. My watch had stopped completely now, frozen at 7:49, but whether that was AM or PM, today or yesterday or tomorrow, I couldn't say. The quality of light outside remained unchanged, that strange, diffuse glow that cast no shadows and gave no indication of the sun's position. The store's back room provided temporary shelter and, miraculously, untouched supplies. I found more bottled water, energy bars, batteries. A small television sat on a break room table, and I tried it, not expecting anything. To my surprise, it flickered to life, showing nothing but static at first, then resolving into an image. A news anchor stared out, her expression eerily calm despite the emergency broadcast banner flashing below her. Her makeup was too perfect, her posture too rigid. When she spoke, her lips seemed slightly out of sync with her words. Urge all residents to remain calm. The Nevada National Guard has established a security perimeter around the affected area. Those experiencing symptoms should report to medical stations immediately. Symptoms include disorientation, time perception anomalies, and auditory hallucinations. Do not approach individuals exhibiting unusual behavior. The screen cut to footage of military vehicles at what looked like a checkpoint. Armed soldiers in hazmat gear were turning away civilians trying to leave. By order of the Federal Emergency Management Agency and the Centers for Disease Control, Las Vegas and surrounding Clark County remain under mandatory quarantine. All exit routes are secured by military personnel. Attempts to breach the quarantine line will be met with appropriate force. The camera panned across a line of desperate people confronting the soldiers, then abruptly cut back to the anchor. Residents are reminded that the situation is under control. The atmospheric phenomenon is expected to dissipate within 72 hours. Remain in your homes. Conserve water and food. Normal services will resume shortly. Her face froze for a moment, then the image distorted, her features stretching impossibly before the screen went black. In the silence that followed, I heard a soft whispering sound, coming from the ash that had accumulated in the corners of the room, forming those same swirling patterns I'd seen outside. I gathered what supplies I could carry and left quickly. Outside, the world had transformed yet again. The ashfall had intensified, reducing visibility to maybe 50 feet. Through the curtain of gray, shapes moved, some human, walking with that same entranced slowness I'd seen earlier, others, not human at all. Tall, fluid silhouettes that seemed partially formed from the ash itself, their movements impossibly graceful, weaving between buildings and frozen people alike. I kept to doorways and alleyways, avoiding open spaces, trying to stay hidden from both the shambling human figures and the other things. My destination had crystallized in my mind with sudden clarity. I needed to reach the quarantine line. Needed to see for myself if escape was possible. The broadcast had mentioned all exit routes being secured, but I knew Vegas and its surroundings intimately. There were old service roads, hiking trails, places the military might have overlooked in their rush to establish a perimeter. The nearest would be to the west, through Summerlin toward Red Rock. I oriented myself as best I could in the ash-veiled city and began moving westward, staying alert for any movement. The going was slow. Streets were blocked by abandoned vehicles, some arranged in deliberate barricades. Twice I had to hide as military Humvees prowled past, soldiers in full hazmat gear scanning the area with spotlights that cut through the ash with unnatural sharpness. Hours passed. The light never changed. My watch remained frozen at 7:49, useless. I measured time by my own exhaustion, by the dwindling supply of water, by the increasing heaviness of the ash that settled on my clothes and skin despite my efforts to keep it off. Near what I guessed was the western edge of the city, I heard voices, normal, human voices, and approached cautiously. In the parking lot of a suburban shopping center, a group of about 20 people had established a makeshift camp. Vehicles arranged in a protective circle, supplies stacked in the center, lookouts posted at intervals. They looked normal, alert, aware, actively brushing ash from their clothes and hair. One spotted me as I approached and raised a shotgun in warning. "That's far enough," he called. "Show your eyes." I stopped, confused. "What? Your eyes? Pull down your hood and show us your eyes." I complied, pushing back my hood, lowering my scarf slightly. 3 people examined me intently, then nodded to each other. The shotgun lowered. "He's clean. For now." The man gestured me forward. "Sorry about that. Can't be too careful. They don't look right anymore, once it gets to them." "They?" I asked, stepping into their circle. "The ones who stare at the ash. First their eyes change, get this milky film, then start to glow." A woman in her 40s, wearing what had once been business attire, now dust-covered and torn. Then they stop talking. Just stand there. Then they start to change. "We're getting out," said the man with the shotgun. "Military's got the main roads blocked, but Hank here used to work highway patrol. Says there's an access road through the desert that might not be guarded. We're heading there now. Can I join you?" I asked, hope rising for the first time in what felt like days. They exchanged glances. "More people, more risk," said an older man, Hank presumably. "But we're not leaving anyone behind who's still themselves. You got supplies?" I nodded, showing my backpack. "Then welcome aboard. We leave in 10 minutes. The group moved with practiced efficiency, loading supplies into 3 large SUVs. I learned they had formed their alliance yesterday, or what they thought was yesterday, when the first military roadblocks appeared. Most had tried to evacuate early, only to be turned back. They'd been hiding since, watching as more and more people succumbed to whatever was in the ash. "It gets in through the eyes first," explained a young woman as we climbed into the vehicles. "Then the lungs. Then everywhere. We've seen what happens next. It's why we check everyone's eyes." "What has happened next?" I asked, dreading the answer. "They become something else," she said simply, and would elaborate no further. We drove through the ash-choked streets, headlights barely penetrating the dense curtain of falling particles. Twice we diverted course to avoid military checkpoints. Once we passed a group of the standing figures, 7 of them in a perfect circle in the middle of a residential street, faces upturned, bodies motionless except for a slight swaying in unison. None reacted as we drove past. Eventually, the urban landscape gave way to desert, though it was a desert transformed, ash covering the sand and scrub in undulating dunes that shifted in ways no wind could explain. The road narrowed, became unpaved, then barely more than a track winding through rocky terrain. "Almost there," Hank announced from the lead vehicle over a handheld radio. "Quarantine line should be just over this ridge. If they found this route, we'll see lights." We crested the ridge slowly, headlights off now, moving on moonlight that somehow penetrated the ash cloud above. Below, stretching across the desert floor, was a line of military vehicles, powerful searchlights sweeping the terrain. Soldiers in hazmat suits patrolled at intervals. Beyond them, tantalizingly close, was clear sky. The ash stopped at the quarantine line as if held back by an invisible wall. "Damn," Hank's voice crackled over the radio. "They've got it covered." "Now what?" someone asked. "We rush it," said the shotgun man. 3 vehicles spread out. "They can't stop us all." Debate erupted, some agreeing, others arguing for finding another route. As they argued, I noticed something in the ash near our vehicles. The same swirling patterns, forming and reforming, stretching toward us like questing fingers. "We need to move," I said urgently. "Now. It's found us." They followed my pointing finger, saw the patterns forming in the ash. "Go!" Hank shouted over the radio, and all 3 vehicles surged forward, racing down the slope toward the quarantine line. Searchlights swung in our direction. Soldiers ran to positions. A voice boomed over a loudspeaker. "Stop immediately. This area is under military quarantine. Stop or we will fire." We didn't stop. The quarantine line loomed closer, the clear sky beyond it a promise of escape. 300 yards. 200. Shots rang out, warning shots, kicking up dust ahead of our vehicles. 100 yards. The loudspeaker again. Final warning. "Stop your vehicles." 50 yards. Something moved in the ash beside us, those tall, fluid shapes, pacing our vehicles, moving impossibly fast. One leaped onto the hood of the SUV beside ours, its form briefly illuminated by the headlights. A vaguely humanoid shape composed entirely of swirling ash particles, its face, a suggestion of features that shifted constantly, its eyes glowing with an internal blue-white light. The vehicle swerved violently, rolled, crashed in a spray of ash and debris. More shots fired, not warnings this time. Our driver screamed as our windshield shattered, his body jerking as bullets found their mark. The SUV veered off course, heading straight for a military barricade. Impact. Darkness. I awoke to the sound of a helicopter. Pain lanced through my body. I was being carried on a stretcher, ash swirling around me despite the rotor wash. Hazmat-suited figures moved efficiently, loading me into the aircraft. "This one's still viable," a voice said, distorted through a respirator. "Minimal exposure." "Tag him for the facility," another replied. "Phase 2 trials." As they secured me to the stretcher, I caught a glimpse past them, back toward Vegas. The entire city was now obscured by a dome of swirling ash, punctuated by strange, pulsing lights from within. At its edges, more of those elongated figures gathered, watching the quarantine line with glowing eyes. One turned its gaze directly to me as the helicopter lifted off. In my mind, a voice whispered, "We will find you again. No one escapes. This is just the beginning." I don't remember how long I wandered after being turned away at the quarantine line. Hours, maybe. The sun had begun to set, casting an eerie orange glow through the thickening ash that now fell like snow across the Vegas skyline. My throat burned despite the bandana I'd tied around my face. Each breath felt like inhaling fine glass. The Bellagio loomed ahead, its famous fountains still and silent. The hotel entrance stood unguarded, doors propped open with abandoned luggage. I stumbled inside, drawn by the promise of filtered air and shelter from the increasingly toxic atmosphere outside. "Hey, over here," a voice called from the darkened casino floor. "Are you alone?" I approached cautiously. 5 people huddled around what appeared to be a makeshift camp among the silent slot machines. Sleeping bags, bottled water, energy bars carefully arranged on a blackjack table. A battery-operated lantern cast long shadows across their faces. "You look like shit," a woman in her 50s wearing a hotel staff uniform said, offering me a bottle of water. "I'm Diane, head of housekeeping. Or was." She gestured to the others. "That's Marcus, he's a pilot. The couple is Maya and Trevor, tourists from Seattle. And that's Professor Hansen. He's been explaining some theories about what's happening." Hansen looked the part, tweed jacket despite the heat, wire-rimmed glasses, the disheveled appearance of someone whose mind worked faster than his body could keep up with. He nodded at me but didn't stop fiddling with a small ham radio. I collapsed into a chair, gulping water so quickly I choked. After catching my breath, I asked, "Any of you know what's going on out there?" "The military's blocking all exits. I saw them shooting at people trying to break through." Marcus, the pilot, leaned forward. "I was flying in from Los Angeles when this started. Air traffic control ordered all flights diverted from McCarran. No explanation. But I saw it from the air, this cloud moving in from the desert. Not like normal weather. It moved against the wind. Directed. Hansen muttered without looking up. Purpose-driven dissemination. What? I asked. Hansen finally set the radio down. The ash. It's not random. It's being distributed in a pattern. I've been tracking reports before communications went down. It's concentrated here, but there are smaller deposits forming perfect geometric patterns up to 15 miles outside the city. Maya, who hadn't spoken until now, placed something on the table. A small jar containing ash particles. But unlike the gray dust coating everything outside, these glinted with an internal luminescence, a faint blue-white glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. We collected these this morning, she said quietly. They weren't glowing at first, but after a few hours, Hansen took the jar, studying it with clinical detachment. Bioluminescence, or something mimicking it. I've been developing a theory based on the limited data we have. This isn't ash at all. It's more likely some kind of microscopic organism, possibly extraterrestrial. Trevor scoffed. Aliens? Seriously? It's obviously some kind of chemical weapon test gone wrong. Military's all over this place. Nellis Air Force Base is right there. Then why can't they contain it? Hansen countered. Why are they running scared just like us? I was on the phone with a colleague at UNLV's biology department when communications were still working. He was examining samples and said the particles were reacting to stimuli. Changing. Adapting. Diane shook her head. I don't care what it is. I just want to know how to survive it. My daughter lives in Phoenix. I need to get to her. The conversation fractured into arguments about what was happening, what we should do. Maya and Trevor insisted we should try another exit point from the city. Marcus believed we should wait for official rescue. Diane just wanted reliable information about the outside world. Throughout it all, Hansen kept glancing at his jar of glowing particles with a mixture of fear and fascination. The emergency broadcast system suddenly crackled to life on Hansen's radio. This is an emergency alert. Las Vegas remains under mandatory quarantine. Exposure to atmospheric particulates has been linked to severe neurological effects. Symptoms include disorientation, hallucinations, and... The broadcaster's voice changed subtly, becoming slower, dreamlike. And clarity. Such beautiful clarity. The light shows the way. They're coming through now. They've always been here, waiting for us to see. Static overwhelmed the transmission, then silence. We stared at the radio, a new horror settling over the group. Did anyone else notice his voice changing? I asked. Hansen nodded grimly. Neurological effects, as mentioned. The broadcaster was likely exposed. Exposed to what? Trevor demanded. What the hell is happening to people? As if summoned by his question, a hotel security guard stumbled into our makeshift camp. His uniform was coated in ash, his movements jerky and uncoordinated. We all tensed, but Diane stepped forward. Carl, is that you? Are you okay? The man looked up, and I felt my blood freeze. His eyes reflected the lantern light oddly, seeming to amplify it. Beneath his ash-covered skin, faint traces of luminescence pulsed along his veins. They're talking to me, Carl whispered. All of them. Millions of voices. They've been trying to reach us for so long. Hansen backed away slowly, pulling the jar of glowing particles close to his chest. How long have you been exposed to the ash, Carl? Hours. Days. Time doesn't matter to them. Carl's gaze drifted to Hansen's jar, his expression a mixture of longing and reverence. You have some. They want to come home. Who are they? I asked, finding my voice despite my terror. Carl smiled, and I swear his teeth gleamed with the same inner light that traced his veins. The travelers. They've crossed between for so long, waiting for the right conditions. Vegas is perfect. All that energy, all that life and light concentrated in the desert. A beacon. Diane approached him cautiously. Carl, you need medical attention. You're not making sense. As she reached for him, Carl seized her wrist. Where his fingers touched her skin, tiny motes of light seemed to transfer from him to her. She gasped, more in surprise than pain, and pulled away. What did you do to me? She whispered, examining the glowing pinpricks on her wrist that were already fading into her skin. Shared, Carl said simply. They only want to share, to connect, to become. Hansen suddenly grabbed my arm. We need to isolate him. Now. The particulates, they're not just in the air. They can transfer from person to person once they've taken hold. Before we could react, Carl convulsed violently, falling to his knees. Light erupted from his mouth, his eyes, from beneath his fingernails, not blinding, but intense enough to illuminate the entire casino floor in a soft blue glow. "It doesn't hurt," he gasped between spasms. "It feels like becoming everything at once." Marcus and Trevor managed to drag Carl to a nearby security office, locking him inside. Through the window in the door, we could see him curled on the floor, light pulsing beneath his skin in waves that matched his heartbeat. When they returned, Diane was staring at her wrist where Carl had grabbed her, her expression haunted. "I can hear something," she whispered. "Like whispers, but not in English. Not in any language." Hansen looked grim. "It's happening faster than I anticipated. The particles don't just affect the body, they somehow interface with the nervous system. Possibly the brain itself." "You're saying they're communicating?" I asked, the horror of the implication settling over me. "Or rewriting," Hansen replied. "Either way, we're witnessing something beyond our current scientific understanding. A paradigm shift in what it means to be human." The lights of the casino flickered, then died completely. In the sudden darkness, I noticed something terrible. The jar of particles Hansen clutched wasn't the only source of light anymore. Tiny motes had begun to glow in the ash covering our clothes, our hair, our skin. We were all already carrying them. And somewhere in the distance, emergency sirens began to wail once more. None of us slept that night. How could we? Every few hours, we took turns checking on Carl through the security office window. His transformation accelerated as the hours passed, the glow beneath his skin intensifying until he resembled a human-shaped constellation, points of light connecting in patterns that seemed almost deliberate. By dawn, he had stopped moving entirely, sitting cross-legged in the center of the room, head tilted toward the ceiling, eyes open but unseeing. Diane's condition deteriorated more slowly. The luminescent points where Carl had grabbed her wrist spread up her arm like a network of glowing veins. She insisted it didn't hurt, quite the opposite. "It feels warm," she whispered, "like sinking into a hot bath after freezing in the snow." Hansen kept her isolated in a corner of our makeshift camp, taking notes on her condition with scientific detachment that couldn't quite mask his fear. The rest of us methodically brushed the ash from our clothes and skin, though we all suspected it was already too late. "We need supplies," Maya announced as morning light filtered through the casino's tinted windows. "Food, water, medical supplies. We can't stay here forever." Trevor nodded. "I'll go with you. The shops in the hotel should have what we need." I volunteered to join them, desperate for any action to distract from our mounting dread. As we prepared to venture deeper into the Bellagio, Hansen grabbed my arm. "Be careful," he said, his voice low. "And if you see any military personnel, try to get information. Real information, not the sanitized broadcasts. I suspect they know far more than they're telling the public." The once opulent hotel corridors felt alien now, emergency lights casting blood-red shadows across marble floors covered in a fine layer of ash that seemed to have penetrated even this sealed environment. The shops had already been picked clean of food and water, but we found a stash of medical supplies in a staff break room. As we passed the hotel's convention center, we heard voices, many voices, speaking in urgent tones. Trevor held up his hand, motioning for us to stop. We crept forward silently until we could peer through the partially open doors. Inside, the sprawling space had been converted into a makeshift military command center. Dozens of soldiers in hazmat suits moved between computer stations. Large screens displayed satellite imagery of Las Vegas and the surrounding desert, overlaid with ominous red zones that appeared to be spreading outward from the city center. A commanding officer stood at the center of the room, barking orders. "Quarantine line is failing at checkpoint 7. We need those reinforcements now." "Sir, we've lost contact with the eastern perimeter," a soldier reported. "Last transmission reported multiple civilian breaches." "God damn it. Those civilians are as good as dead if they're carrying trace amounts outside the containment zone. Send pursuit teams, full decontamination protocol." Maya's grip on my arm tightened. "They're shooting people who try to escape," she whispered. "That's what decontamination protocol means." We continued watching in horrified silence as a scientist in a hazmat suit approached the commander with a tablet. "Sir, latest analysis confirms our worst fears. The particulates aren't just colonizing human hosts, they're restructuring them at the cellular level. Perhaps even at the quantum level." The commander's face hardened. "In English, Doctor. They're not killing people. They're changing them. Into what? We don't know. But the process appears engineered, deliberate. This isn't some natural phenomenon. It's too perfect, too adaptive." "Are you telling me this is an attack?" The scientist hesitated. Not exactly. More like an invasion or a colonization, but without traditional weapons or spacecraft. These microscopic entities appear to be the advance wave of something bigger. How do we stop it? That's just it, sir. The particulates have integrated with the hosts so completely that we can't destroy one without destroying the other. And the changed hosts, they're exhibiting capabilities we don't understand. The three we managed to capture, they escaped containment 2 hours ago. Just walked through the walls like they weren't there. A commotion at the far end of the command center drew everyone's attention. Soldiers rushed toward the doors, raising weapons. Breach! We have a breach. The doors burst open, and 2 figures entered. Figures that had once been human but now resembled walking constellations of light, their bodies semi-transparent, glowing organs and luminescent blood visible through translucent skin. They moved with impossible grace, each step purposeful. The soldiers opened fire immediately, bullets tearing through the glowing figures without resistance. No blood spilled, only streams of luminescent particles that hung in the air momentarily before rejoining the bodies they'd been severed from. "Cease fire," the scientist screamed. "Bullets are ineffective." One of the glowing figures raised a hand, and every screen in the command center flickered, died, then came back to life, displaying the same message repeated endlessly. "We have always been here. You have always been becoming." The commander drew his sidearm. "What do you want?" he demanded. The glowing figure tilted its head, studying him with eyes that contained galaxies. When it spoke, the voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, resonating not through air but through our minds. "One implies separation. There is no separation, only transformation. Your species stands at a threshold. We are the threshold." Maya gasped beside me, and I realized too late that the sound had carried. The glowing figure's gaze shifted to our hiding place, its expression unreadable but somehow curious. "More vessels approach readiness," it said. "The awakening accelerates." The commander fired his weapon directly at the figure's head. The bullet passed through, leaving a tunnel of light that closed immediately. With frightening speed, the figure crossed the room and placed a luminescent hand on the commander's chest. Where they connected, light spread through the commander's body, his back arching in what might have been agony or ecstasy. "Run," Trevor whispered. Now, we fled, abandoning our supplies, racing back through the hotel corridors. Behind us, gunfire erupted, followed by screams that transformed mid-voice into something that sounded almost like singing. When we reached our camp, we found Hansen frantically packing his notes. "We have to leave," he said without looking up. "Diane's gone." "Gone where?" I asked, though some part of me already knew. Hansen gestured to the empty corner where we'd left her. She started changing faster. Then she just walked through the wall. Literally through it, like it wasn't there. But that's not all. He pointed to his jar of particles. They're responding to something, some kind of signal. The particles were indeed moving differently now, organizing themselves into complex geometric patterns that pulsed with increasing intensity. "Military's compromised," Trevor said breathlessly. "We saw transformed people at their command center. Bullets don't stop them. Nothing stops them. They're not killing people," Maya added. "They're changing them. The soldiers, they just gave up, let themselves be transformed." Marcus, who had been silent until now, stood up. "I found maps in the hotel office. There's maintenance tunnels under the strip that might lead past the quarantine line. It's our only chance." As we gathered what supplies remained, a final emergency broadcast echoed through the radio. "This is Colonel James Herrick of the United States Army. Las Vegas containment has failed. I am ordering all remaining military personnel to withdraw to secondary containment lines. To any surviving civilians, God help you. What you're facing, they were never human. They were never." The broadcast cut off abruptly, replaced by a harmonic tone that made my teeth ache and my vision blur. Through the casino windows, I could see distant figures moving through the ash-filled streets, dozens of them, their glowing bodies leaving trails of light as they converged on the hotel. "They're coming," I whispered. "They know we're here." We fled into the maintenance tunnels beneath the Bellagio, guided by Marcus's hastily memorized map. The narrow concrete passageways smelled of mildew and stale air, but mercifully contained no ash, at least not yet. Our flashlights cast jittering shadows as we moved deeper into the labyrinth that supposedly connected the major casinos along the strip. "These should lead all the way to the Wynn," Marcus whispered, his voice echoing slightly. "From there, we might be able to access the storm drainage system that runs east toward the airport." Maya walked close behind him, clutching Trevor's hand. The couple hadn't separated since we fled the military command center. Hansen followed, muttering calculations and theories to himself, still carrying his jar of glowing particles. I brought up the rear, constantly glancing back down the dark tunnel behind us, expecting at any moment to see the luminescent figures following. After what felt like hours of navigating the maze-like tunnels, we reached a junction where four passages met. Marcus hesitated, consulting his mental map. "I think we need to go left here," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Hansen had been growing increasingly agitated as we progressed. Now he stopped completely, holding up his jar of particles. "Look at them. They're orienting." We gathered around. The glowing motes inside the jar had arranged themselves into a perfect arrow shape, pointing down the rightmost tunnel. "That's not the way to the win," Marcus said slowly. "They're responding to something," Hansen replied. "Some kind of signal or presence." "All the more reason to go the opposite direction," Trevor argued, tugging Maya toward the left passage. Hansen shook his head. "You don't understand. These particles, they're everywhere now. In the air, in the water, in us. Running won't help. We need to understand what's happening if we have any hope of surviving it." Before anyone could respond, a distant explosion rocked the tunnels, sending dust and concrete fragments raining down on us. The shockwave knocked me to my knees. "What the hell was that?" Maya gasped. "That," Hansen said grimly, "was the sound of authority making its last stand." We pushed on, taking the left passage despite Hansen's objections. Eventually, the tunnel opened into a larger maintenance area beneath what Marcus identified as Caesar's Palace. We decided to rest there briefly, sharing our dwindling water supplies and the few energy bars that remained. "I need to check our position," Marcus said, eyeing a metal ladder that led up to what appeared to be a service entrance. "I'll be quick." "I'll go with you," I volunteered, needing to see daylight again, to know what was happening above. We climbed the ladder and emerged into a storage room filled with cleaning supplies. The door was unlocked, opening into a service corridor that eventually led to the main casino floor. What we saw there stopped us cold. Caesar's Palace, with its famous Roman-themed opulence, had become something from another world entirely. The massive space was empty of people but filled with soft, pulsing light that emanated from every surface where ash had settled. The grand statues were coated in luminescent particles that made them appear alive, glowing from within. Most striking were the elaborate patterns being formed across the floor, perfect geometric shapes that shifted and flowed as if directed by an invisible hand. "My God," Marcus whispered. "It's everywhere." Through the towering windows facing the Strip, we could see Las Vegas transformed. The famous skyline, normally ablaze with neon and LED displays, now glowed with a different kind of light, organic, alive, purposeful. Columns of luminescence rose from several casino rooftops, stretching upward into the ash-filled sky. And moving through the streets were dozens, perhaps hundreds, of the glowing figures, their procession silent and coordinated. Most disturbing of all, no sign of military vehicles, barricades, or personnel. Where there had been Humvees and armed soldiers just hours ago, now there was nothing but empty streets gradually being reclaimed by luminescent ash. "They're gone," I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. "The military's completely gone." Marcus pressed his face against the window. "Look there, the McCarran control tower." In the distance, the airport's control tower was clearly visible, a column of intense light shooting skyward from its peak. Even as we watched, military helicopters approached the phenomenon, only to veer wildly off course when they drew near, several crashing into the desert beyond. "They can't even get close to it," Marcus said. "Whatever that light is, it's disrupting their equipment, maybe even their pilots." A sound behind us made us both spin around. One of the casino security guards, or what had once been a security guard, stood watching us. His transformation was well advanced, skin translucent, veins glowing with blue-white light. His movements were fluid yet somehow wrong, as if the human form was an ill-fitting suit being worn by something that had never understood human locomotion. "You resist without purpose," he said, his voice resonating oddly. "The threshold cannot be refused once approached." Marcus grabbed my arm, pulling me back toward the service corridor. The transformed guard made no move to follow us, simply watching with eyes that seemed to see through rather than at us. "You will understand when you join the communion," he called after us. "Time is the only variable now." We raced back to the maintenance area, nearly falling down the ladder in our haste. The others looked up in alarm as we burst in, breathless and panicked. We need to move, Marcus gasped. Now. But as we gathered our meager supplies, I noticed something that turned my blood to ice. Hansen's hands, which had been continuously handling the jar of particles, now bore the faint blue-white glow we'd seen in Diane before she changed. Hansen, I said quietly, pointing to his hands. You're showing signs. He looked down at his glowing fingertips with scientific curiosity rather than fear. Fascinating. The propagation rate is increasing. The particles must be reaching critical concentration in the environment. You need to stay back from us, Trevor said, pulling Maya behind him protectively. Hansen smiled sadly. It wouldn't matter. We're all carrying them now. The only difference is time, how quickly the critical threshold is reached in each of us. He held up his jar. I've been studying them. They organize according to some complex mathematics beyond our understanding. They communicate. They're creating a network, using us as nodes. I don't care what they're doing, Trevor snapped. We need to get out of this city. Hansen's expression hardened. You still don't understand. There is no out anymore. Las Vegas was just the beginning, ground zero. An experiment. The perfect test site, isolated in the desert. By now, the particles will have spread far beyond the quarantine line. As if confirming his words, Maya suddenly doubled over, clutching her chest. When she straightened, tiny points of light had appeared beneath the skin of her face, tracing constellations across her cheeks. Trevor, she whispered, reaching for him. I can hear them. So many voices. Trevor backed away from her, horror etched on his face. No, this isn't happening. It doesn't hurt, she said, her voice taking on the same resonant quality we'd heard in the transformed guard. It feels like expanding, like I've been trapped in a tiny room my whole life and suddenly discovered doors in every wall. Hansen approached her, examining the spreading luminescence with professional interest. What do you hear exactly? What are they saying? Maya's eyes, now rimmed with light, focused on something none of us could see. Not saying, showing. They've been waiting so long, traveling between spaces we can't perceive. They need vessels to complete the transformation, to make this world ready. Ready for what? I asked, dreading the answer. She turned to me, smiling beatifically as light began to spill from her mouth when she spoke. For those who follow, the travelers are just the beginning. They prepare the way for what comes after. Trevor let out a broken sob and ran for the tunnels. Marcus hesitated only a moment before following him. I stood frozen, caught between flight and a terrible curiosity. Hansen made no move to leave, still observing Maya's accelerating transformation with the detachment of a scientist witnessing a breakthrough. You should go, he told me without looking away from Maya. I'm staying. This is the most significant event in human history. I need to document it, understand it, even if I become part of it. I backed away, my survival instinct finally overriding my fascination with the horror unfolding before me. As I turned to flee into the tunnels, Maya's voice, now barely recognizable as human, called after me. It doesn't matter how far you run. The ash is everywhere now. The light finds everyone in the end. The last thing I saw before darkness enveloped me was Hansen reaching out to take Maya's glowing hand in his own, their luminescence merging as they touched. I ran through the tunnels until my legs gave out and my lungs burned. The beam of my flashlight bounced wildly off concrete walls, creating disorienting patterns of light and shadow. I had no idea where Marcus and Trevor had gone. Their footsteps had faded long ago, leaving me alone in the labyrinth beneath Las Vegas. When I could run no further, I collapsed against a wall, sliding down until I sat in the cold dust. My water bottle was nearly empty. The energy bar in my pocket was my last. As my breathing steadied, I became aware of the profound silence surrounding me. No distant explosions, no military vehicles overhead, no screams. Just the occasional drip of water from rusted pipes and the sound of my own heartbeat. I don't know how long I sat there before I realized I had no plan, no destination, nowhere left to run. Eventually, I forced myself to move, choosing tunnel branches at random until I found a small maintenance room with a heavy metal door that locked from the inside. It contained shelves of cleaning supplies, a sink with running water, though I dared not drink it, and a threadbare cot probably used by maintenance workers during breaks. It would have to do. I barricaded the door with shelving units, then collapsed onto the cot, utterly spent. Despite my exhaustion, sleep came fitfully in fragments broken by nightmares. In my dreams, I stood on the Vegas Strip, but all the casinos were made of light, living, breathing structures that pulsed with an internal rhythm. The transformed humans moved among them, no longer recognizable as individuals. They had become part of a vast network, like neurons in some colossal brain. Above it all, the sky opened like a mouth, and something began to emerge. I woke gasping, drenched in sweat. The room was pitch black. My flashlight had died while I slept. I fumbled for the backup in my pocket, clicking it on with shaking hands. The beam illuminated the same dingy room, but something was different. On the wall opposite my cot, barely visible patterns had formed in the thin layer of ash that seemed to penetrate even this sealed space. As I watched, the patterns shifted slightly, rearranging into what looked disturbingly like writing. Not in any human language, but in luminescent symbols that hurt my eyes to look at directly. I rubbed them away with my sleeve, trying to convince myself it was my imagination, a hallucination born of stress and sleep deprivation. But within minutes, they began to reform. That was 3 days ago, or maybe 4. I've lost track of time down here. My watch runs backwards sometimes, or too fast, or stops completely before starting again. The small digital clock on my phone shows impossible times, 3 hours 67 minutes, 25:14, flashing sequences of numbers that aren't hours or minutes at all. I've rationed my energy bar into tiny portions, drinking sink water despite my fear of contamination. There was no choice. Hunger clouded my judgment more than potential infection. The worst part is the dreams. They come whether I'm asleep or awake now, visions from the transformed humans on the surface. They want me to join them. They show me what they've become, what they're becoming. A collective consciousness that spans beyond individual bodies, beyond the city, reaching towards something vaster than human comprehension. In one dream, I saw Hansen and Maya standing in the center of the Bellagio fountain, their transformed bodies acting as conduits for columns of light that stretched into the sky. They were smiling, ecstatic, as their individual consciousnesses merged with thousands of others across the city. In another, I witnessed Trevor's final moments of humanity. He had made it to the edge of the city only to find the military had established a scorched earth perimeter. They were bombing their own quarantine line, sacrificing everything within to prevent spread. He was caught between advancing transformed humans and a wall of fire. In the dream, he chose the light over the flames, walking willingly into the embrace of glowing arms. I don't know if these visions are real or manifestations of my fractured psyche. Perhaps both. The line between reality and hallucination grows thinner by the hour. This morning, if it was morning, the concept seems increasingly irrelevant. I discovered an old radio on one of the shelves. Its batteries were weak, but it picked up fragments of broadcasts from outside the city. What I heard confirmed my worst fears. Spreading beyond containment zones. Phoenix reporting first cases of luminescent transformation. CDC has no effective countermeasures. Reports of mass gatherings at sites of transformation. President has been moved to secure location. Salt Lake City now designated quarantine zone. The final broadcast I managed to receive was the most disturbing. This emergency alert is being transmitted on all available frequencies. Military and scientific authorities have confirmed the phenomenon originates from outside our solar system. Citizen reports of voices or communications from transformed individuals should be disregarded. Under no circumstances approach transformed individuals. Las Vegas has been designated a level 5 contamination zone. All civilian evacuation efforts have been suspended. May God help us all. The radio died after that, batteries finally depleted. I was almost relieved. I've started to notice changes in myself. Tiny points of light visible beneath the skin of my forearms when I turn off the flashlight. Not imagination. Not a trick of the light. They're inside me now. Growing. Connecting. Waiting to reach whatever critical threshold triggers full transformation. Last night, I tried to use a bleach-soaked rag to scrub the particles from my skin. The pain was excruciating, but the luminescent points remained, mockingly visible beneath my raw, bleeding flesh. They aren't on me. They're in me. Perhaps they always have been, dormant until activated by whatever signal or catalyst arrived in Las Vegas. Most disturbing of all, I'm becoming less afraid. With each passing hour, the horror recedes, replaced by a detached curiosity. The same clinical interest I saw in Hansen's eyes as he studied his own transformation. Is this how it begins? Does the change alter our emotions first, preparing our minds for what our bodies will become? I've started hearing them too. Not voices exactly, but impressions, images, mathematical concepts beyond my education. geometries that shouldn't be possible. When I close my eyes, I see structures forming, vast, incomprehensible architectures being assembled across Las Vegas, across the Southwest, perhaps across the world. Yesterday, I discovered I could move the ash particles on the wall without touching them, just by focusing my attention. The symbols responded to my thoughts, rearranging into patterns that somehow made sense despite their alienness. I spent hours communicating with them, though I couldn't tell you what was said. The exchange occurred in a language that bypasses words entirely. This morning, I tried the door to my shelter for the first time in days. The heavy barricade I constructed moved aside with surprising ease, or perhaps I've grown stronger in ways I don't understand. The tunnels outside were no longer dark. A faint bioluminescence coated the walls, providing enough light to see without my flashlight. I followed the glow, compelled by something beyond curiosity. It led me to a vertical shaft with a ladder leading upward. Sunlight, or what I assumed was sunlight, filtered down from above. I began to climb, drawn toward the surface by an irresistible pull. I stopped halfway up. Some last fragment of my humanity reasserted control. I retreated to my shelter, sealed the door again. But I know I won't resist for much longer. The call is too persistent, too persuasive. The light promises answers, connection, transcendence. I'm writing this account on the back of a maintenance schedule I found in the room, using a pencil stub from my pocket. I don't know why. Perhaps as a final assertion of my humanity, before it dissolves into the greater consciousness that awaits. Perhaps as a warning, though I doubt anyone will find it before the transformation is complete. If you're reading this and still fully human, run. Though I no longer believe running will save you. The particles travel on air currents, in water, through human contact. They're patient, methodical, inevitable. The symbols on the wall are growing brighter now. My fingertips leave trails of light when I move them through the air. The boundaries of my body feel less certain, as if I'm beginning to diffuse into my surroundings. I think I'll climb that ladder after all. I want to see what Las Vegas has become. What I'm becoming. What we're all becoming. I don't know how long I stayed in that maintenance room after writing what I believed would be my final testament. Hours, perhaps. The steady progression of light beneath my skin continued regardless of time's passage. My veins glowed like fiber optic cables, carrying something other than blood through my body. I watched, detached yet fascinated, as the network expanded, connecting points of luminescence across my arms, chest, and legs. When I finally emerged from my shelter, I no longer needed a flashlight. My own body provided sufficient illumination to navigate the tunnels, casting eerie blue-white shadows on concrete walls. The compulsion to climb that ladder, to reach the surface, had become overwhelming, less a desire than a biological imperative, like breathing or heartbeat. I ascended slowly, each rung bringing me closer to whatever awaited above. The shaft opened into what had once been the basement of the Venetian casino. Sunlight streamed through broken windows, but it seemed pale and insignificant compared to the luminescence that now filled the space. The casino floor had transformed beyond recognition. The slot machines, gaming tables, and gaudy decorations remained, but they served as mere scaffolding for something new. The ash had accumulated in thick layers, forming structures that defied conventional architecture, crystalline growths that pulsed with internal light, organic columns that spiraled toward the ceiling, networks of luminescent filaments connecting everything in patterns too perfect to be random. More shocking than the transformed environment were the transformed humans moving through it. Dozens of them glided across the casino floor with fluid, synchronized movements. Their bodies had progressed far beyond my own early-stage changes. Skin had become nearly transparent, revealing organs that no longer appeared entirely human, redesigned for purposes I couldn't comprehend. Their eyes contained galaxies of light, and where their feet touched the floor, ripples of luminescence spread outward. They paid me no attention as I emerged fully into their midst. Not hostile, not welcoming, simply accepting my presence as inevitable. They moved with purpose, though toward what end I couldn't determine. Drawn by an inexplicable certainty, I made my way through the casino toward the entrance facing the strip. Each step felt lighter than the last, as if gravity's hold on me was gradually loosening. By the time I reached the massive doors, I was almost gliding like the others. I stepped outside into Las Vegas transformed. The famous Strip, once a monument to human excess, a neon-drenched testament to our desires and delusions, had become something transcendent. The casinos still stood, but they served as skeletons for vast structures of light that extended far above their original heights. Caesar's palace had sprouted crystalline towers that twisted impossibly before merging with similar growths from the Bellagio across the street. The mirage was encased in a geodesic lattice of pure energy that seemed to phase in and out of our reality. The sky above had changed as well. Through breaks in the ash clouds, I could see that the familiar blue had been replaced by something deeper, violet verging on black even at midday, with colors I had no names for pulsing at the edges of my vision. And in that alien sky, shapes moved, vast, indistinct forms that seemed to observe the transformation below with ancient patience. Most striking of all was the absence of chaos. No panic, no destruction, no fighting. The violence and resistance of the early days had given way to something else, a quietude that wasn't peace exactly, but acceptance. Transformed humans moved through this new landscape with the coordinated precision of cells in a body, each fulfilling some role in a greater organism. As I stood transfixed by the sight, a familiar figure approached. It took me a moment to recognize Hansen through his advanced transformation. His body glowed with such intensity that his original human features were barely discernible, like seeing a face through frosted glass. Only his eyes retained some recognizable humanity, though they now contained constellations of light. "You resisted longer than most," he said, his voice resonating from everywhere at once rather than from his mouth alone. "But you're here now. That's what matters." "What is happening to us?" I asked, surprised that I could still form human words despite the changes in my throat and lungs. Hansen gestured broadly at the transformed city. "Evolution, ascension, communion. Human language lacks adequate terminology." He smiled, an expression that sent ripples of light cascading across his features. "We're becoming what we were always meant to be, not endpoints but junctions. Neurons in a vaster mind. The ash, the particles, what are they?" "Seeds," Hansen replied, "planted across countless worlds throughout time. They await the right conditions to activate, to transform suitable vessels." Earth reached the necessary threshold. Threshold of what? Complexity. Connectivity. Your human scientific career was spent studying emergent properties in complex systems. You should appreciate the elegance of it. When a network reaches sufficient complexity, something new emerges: consciousness from neurons, civilization from individuals. Earth's technological networks laid the groundwork. We're simply the next iteration. I looked down at my hands, now so suffused with light that I could see the atoms rearranging themselves into new configurations. And those who resist? Those who don't want this transformation? Hansen's expression shifted to something like compassion. Resistance stems from misunderstanding, from fear of loss. But nothing is lost, only expanded, connected, elevated. The individual consciousness persists within the greater whole, like a single voice in a chorus. Still distinct, but part of a greater harmony. As he spoke, I became aware of that harmony. Countless minds connected across Las Vegas, across the expanding transformation zones, their thoughts and emotions forming currents in a vast ocean of consciousness. I could sense Marcus somewhere in that flow, his mathematical precision serving some new purpose. Maya and Trevor had merged into the same node, their love preserved but transformed into something beyond human comprehension. Even Diane, one of the first to change, maintained a distinct presence in the collective. "What happens next?" I asked, already suspecting the answer. Hansen gestured toward the sky, where the vast shapes continued their patient observation. "They come, the ones who sent the seeds. Not conquerors, gardeners. They've cultivated countless worlds across billions of years. We join their network, their civilization that spans galaxies. And those still unchanged? The rest of humanity. The transformation spreads. Already, Phoenix glows like we do. Salt Lake City. Los Angeles. The military's containment efforts are futile. They're trying to stop the wind with their hands. Within weeks, North America. Within months, the world." As he spoke, I became aware of more distant nodes in the network, faint but growing stronger by the hour. Other cities where the transformation had taken hold, other humans becoming something more than human. "You still have a choice," Hansen said, surprising me. "The final stage of transformation requires acceptance. Those who cannot embrace the change remain caught between states, neither fully human nor fully transformed. It's unpleasant, a half-existence. Is it really a choice when the alternative is suffering?" Hansen smiled again. "The oldest philosophical question. Does free will exist under constraints? I can only tell you this. Those who accept the transformation report no regret, no loss, only wonder at what they've become. Those who resist. He gestured to a small group of partial transformations huddled in the shadow of a casino, their forms flickering painfully between states, their expressions frozen in perpetual horror. I looked again at Las Vegas transformed, at the sky with its patient observers, at my own body, poised between what I had been and what I might become. "Show me," I said finally. "Show me what we're becoming." Hansen placed his luminescent hand on my chest, directly over my heart. The sensation was indescribable, not pain, not pleasure, but an expansion beyond the boundaries of myself. My consciousness ballooned outward, connecting with the network, experiencing the transformation not as an observer, but as a participant. I saw the future unfolding across Earth. The transformation spreading, humanity evolving into something that transcended our biological limitations. I saw the observers descending at last, entities of pure energy and consciousness, ancient beyond comprehension yet familiar, like distant relatives welcoming us into their cosmic family. And beyond that, I glimpsed the universe as it truly was, not cold and empty, but alive with intelligence, a vast network of transformed civilizations spanning galaxies, sharing knowledge across distances that made light itself seem sluggish. We weren't ending. We were just beginning. As Hansen withdrew his hand, I knew my choice was made. The last vestiges of my humanity, my fear, my resistance, my attachment to what I had been, dissolved like mist in sunlight. I stepped forward, fully embracing the transformation, and felt my consciousness merge with the greater whole without losing itself. A drop of water joining an ocean yet somehow remaining a drop. Las Vegas glowed brighter with my acceptance, one more light in a constellation that grew by the hour. From the observation deck of the Stratosphere Tower, the Las Vegas Strip looked like a painting of the apocalypse, beautiful in its desolation. I'd climbed all 108 floors on foot, past the silent slot machines and abandoned restaurants, through emergency stairwells where the exit signs flickered with dying batteries. My legs burned with fatigue, but I needed to see. One last time, I needed to see everything. The city stretched out beneath me, draped in ash that continued to fall like snow from the sickly amber sky. The famous neon had given way to a different kind of light. They moved through the streets now, thousands of them, their luminescent bodies pulsing in rhythmic patterns I almost recognized. The glowing figures weren't just wandering aimlessly anymore. They were organizing. I pressed my forehead against the glass, leaving a smudge of ash that had accumulated on my skin. My reflection stared back, haggard and hollow-eyed. 7 days since the first emergency alert. 7 days that had unmade the world. My radio crackled with static, then cleared. I'd kept it with me, this last tether to the human world. The voice was female, professional, straining to maintain composure. Emergency alert system. This is not a test. Reports of airborne contaminants have been confirmed in Phoenix, Los Angeles, Salt Lake City, and Denver. Residents should seal all windows and doors and await further instructions. Military operations to contain the Las Vegas outbreak have been unsuccessful. Do not approach individuals exhibiting unusual luminescence. I switched it off. Too late for warnings. Too late for everything. The military's last stand had happened at dawn. I'd watched from this same spot as a squadron of fighter jets screamed toward the city center where the highest concentration of transformed beings had gathered. 3 miles out, their engines had sputtered and died, as if the very air rejected them. The planes had spiraled down like dead birds, crashing into the empty desert. No explosions, no flames, just silence and more ash. My watch had stopped working yesterday, the hands frozen at 3:17. Time felt meaningless now. I'd eaten my last protein bar 12 hours ago, and the bottle of water at my feet held just an inch of liquid. I should have been afraid of dying, but that seemed quaint now. Death wasn't the worst possible outcome anymore. The pain started in my fingertips 3 hours ago, a tingling sensation that had crawled up my arms like frost on a window pane. I'd seen it before in others. The first sign. I turned my hands over, examining them in the fading daylight. My skin had taken on a translucent quality, veins visible but no longer the familiar blue. Instead, they pulsed with a faint amber glow that matched the sky. The same color as them. The same light. "You're afraid," said a voice behind me. I didn't turn around. Didn't need to. I recognized the voice even though it was layered now with harmonics that no human vocal cords could produce. "Hello, Marcus," I said. My former neighbor moved to stand beside me at the window. His transformation was complete, skin entirely translucent, organs visible but altered, pulsing with light. His eyes had no pupils, just radiant pools of luminescence. But I could still recognize the tilt of his head, the way he stood. "We were wrong about it," Marcus said, his voice resonating oddly in the empty observation deck. "It's not killing us. Just changing us into something that isn't human anymore," I replied. "Same difference." Marcus made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Such a human perspective. So binary. Life or death. Victory or defeat. Us or them." I turned to look at him fully. "Do you remember your daughter's name?" A flicker passed through his luminous form, hesitation perhaps. "Emily," he said after a pause. She lives with her mother in Seattle." "And do you still care about her?" "Care?" He seemed to consider the word like a foreign concept. "I understand that she exists, that a bond existed, but it's like remembering a movie I once watched. The emotional urgency is diluted." I nodded, turning back to the window. "That's why I fought it. Why I hid. Because whatever comes after, it isn't us anymore." The pain in my arms intensified, crawling up to my shoulders. I could see the glow beneath my skin brightening. "Not much time left. The transition is easier if you don't resist," Marcus offered, his tone neither kind nor cruel. Simply factual. The radio at my feet burst to life again, unprompted. "Emergency alert system. Reports from Seattle. Glowing figures observed in the ash. Residents of Portland, Vancouver. Quarantine protocols ineffective. Standby for." The broadcast dissolved into static. "It's spreading," I whispered. "Of course," Marcus replied. "It was always going to spread. The atmosphere was seeded weeks ago. Las Vegas was simply where conditions were optimal for first manifestation." "Seeded?" I turned to him. "By what? Aliens? God? Some military experiment gone wrong?" Marcus made that not quite laugh sound again. "Those are human frameworks trying to understand what exists beyond human understanding. It's like asking which ocean a raindrop came from after it falls from the sky. The question itself misunderstands the nature of the phenomenon." The pain reached my chest, constricting my breathing. I slid down against the glass to sit on the floor. Outside, the glowing figures moved in more complex patterns now, forming concentric circles in the streets and open spaces. "What are they doing?" I gasped. Marcus corrected gently. "What are we doing?" "And we're communicating. Synchronizing. Becoming." "Becoming what?" "Something new. Something that can survive what's coming." I looked up at him, this thing that had been my neighbor, this being that spoke with calm certainty about the end of humanity. "And what's coming?" He knelt beside me, his luminous face unreadable. "Change. The universe breathes too, you know. Inhales and exhales across billions of years. We've lived in an exhalation. The inhalation has begun." The pain receded suddenly, replaced by a spreading warmth. I looked down at my chest where my shirt had fallen open. Light pulsed beneath my ribs in perfect synchronization with the beings outside. My fear felt distant now, academic. I should have been terrified. I should have been fighting. Instead, I felt my thoughts expanding, touching others, a vast network of consciousness unfurling across the city, across the continent. Further, with startling clarity, I understood. It's not an invasion. It's an evacuation. Marcus nodded, offering his hand. "The old world is ending. But we don't have to end with it." I took his hand, my own now glowing brightly enough to cast shadows. Standing was effortless, my body lighter. Different. Through the window, I could see the patterns of light had changed again, all the glowing figures now facing east, toward the rising sun. No, not the sun. Something else was cresting the horizon, massive and impossible, warping the very fabric of reality around it. My last human thought was simple. I should have known. Control was always an illusion. Survival was never an option. Just transformation. As I stepped into the elevator with Marcus, my radio gave one final broadcast, voices from a dozen cities reporting the same phenomenon, their words overlapping. "Emergency alert. Survivors in Chicago are reporting glowing figures in the ash." "Emergency alert. Survivors in Miami are reporting glowing figures in the ash." "Emergency alert. Survivors in New York are reporting glowing figures in the ash." Their voices faded as my mind expanded further, joining the chorus of light that was spreading across the world. Not an ending after all, just a new dawn.